right, so we're back at the Cracks in Postmodernity, and today we have Lexi Freiman, the author of the Book of Ayn. Lexi, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I was just saying, I was at the launch for your book, the party that was in New York, maybe like 3 weeks ago at this point. It was quite the crowd, but when you read the short excerpt from the beginning, I was totally captivated. So I got the book right away, and as I was saying, it was a total page turner. I couldn't put it down because it's the brand of humor you use is, I mean, it's really unique, but also really intelligent. So I just have to say I totally recommend that everyone read it, and it was a really fun time to read. So
Thank you. Thank you. That's
yeah,
very, very nice to hear.
yeah, and so obviously, if you just look at the title, Ayn Rand plays a significant role in the plot of the book. And I want to ask first off, why Ayn Rand? Like, why did you decide to base a book on a protagonist who has a kind of complicated relationship with this intellectual figure?
I mean, precisely for that reason, I think I wanted to write a book about someone that everybody on the left sort of hates, and I thought it would be a fun challenge, and I thought that, a lot of comedy would come out of
Mhm.
choosing a subject like that, and kind of trying to shoehorn her ideas into the contemporary sort of discourse, even though the ideas are already in there. So I don't it wasn't such a monumental task to do, but I thought it would be fun, and she turned out to be a funny subject, so that was lucky.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I mean, obviously, Ayn is a Nietzschean of sorts. This whole
Yeah.
narrative of self-reliance, and we're seeing this Nietzschean discourse coming into the mainstream right now, especially through these kinds of I don't know, like these radical forms of masculinity that we're seeing on in the Twitterverse, that we're seeing all over the internet. So it's
Hmm.
interesting that you're bringing in a female proponent of this kind of mentality. And Ayn Rand's personal life, her behind the scenes story adds an extra level of humor, of I don't know. It adds something to the story that I think we're not already seeing with the whole self-reliance discourse right now. Especially her relationships with men, which, into goes on to influence the protagonist. So can you talk a little bit about Ayn's personal life and how you drew that into the plot of the book?
Yeah, I mean, just I guess I found it interesting as I was reading biographies of her, the way that she handled, being a straight woman, in a kind of like, I guess, in a Nietzschean sort of context where, like, what does it mean to, like, how does that sort of disrupt traditional kind of gender polarity to have a woman who is, Nietzschean? And she was very interested in that, I think. And, she said sort of bizarre things like America could never have a female president because there would be no one for her to date. And like all these things that are like, that sort of like ring true to me in a funny way,
Yeah.
or at least you can like map some of Hillary Clinton's issues onto it, maybe more in like a farcical way.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's some like funny stuff in there. And yeah, just I guess this idea of like, what does it mean to be a Nietzschean woman, and how does that what does that mean for you as a sexual being, and like how does it, yeah, I found all of that stuff very interesting. And I suppose in the context of like the girl boss, like um how does that stuff sort of, yeah, intersect with our current ideas of like what female empowerment looks like, and like, the nightmare of online dating. And yeah, I just thought it was kind of an interesting dilemma that I don't have the answers to. And I thought, yeah, I thought it would be fun to sort of kind of chart what happened to Ein, and in a sense let that sort of a similar dilemma kind of play out for the protagonist of the book.
Yeah, and as you were saying, I mean, Ayn is kind of a hated figure by many.
Mm.
in the West in general, we can say. But I mean, specifically, this whole narrative of self-reliance flies in the face of the kind of cult of victimhood, everything that's part of cancel culture.
Mhm.
But I feel like you use this like self-reliant ideology um, to create a critique of cancel culture that isn't necessarily reactionary, but that's kind of playful. Like it doesn't have this kind of this resentment that so much of the reactionary discourse has, but it's funny. Like it's genuinely humorous. And I feel like one of the main ways that you pull that off is through the whole issue of the age gap, because it's pretty well known that Ayn Rand was interested in guys who are much younger than her, and the protagonist ends up pursuing similar kinds of relationships. And if this were a man doing that with younger women, obviously it would be canceled right away. I mean, a book covering such relationships is you know not acceptable. But it's the way that happens in the plot. It's you're dancing around this like quote unquote problematic territory, but again, it's genuinely hilarious because of the conversations that ensue with these young guys. So I don't know, say a little bit more about that, like the whole gender gap thing and how it kind of plays into this bigger issue of like what's considered problematic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was interesting to me to kind of, I guess, tease out like what the power differential is when it comes to an older woman and a younger man, and often, and in this context, like someone who has a sort of established career, interacting with people, men who are maybe at the beginning of their careers, and just like, is it the same thing in the way that we hear about men who might take advantage of younger women seeking some kind of guidance or mentorship or something? And I guess my feeling about that stuff is, that we have stripped a lot of like agency away from younger women. I'm not talking about underage women, but in the sense that like there's a game and there's a dynamic that's at play where both parties are sort of, like know what the power is that they hold. Like women understand the power of their youth and beauty, and men understand the power of their status and power and whatever financial um, means. And so that's like kind of this thing that I think is working with the reverse, where to me that's like the next step of Me Too. It's like making men more aware of the power differential, but then the next step seems to me to be making women aware of their role in the dynamic, and like shifting the cultural norms there. And then I guess when it comes to the reversal with older women and younger men, I don't know if it's as clear, because it's not. To me, it's like murkier because these older women may have a certain kind of cultural power potentially, but then in terms of like the sexual power of an older woman, that's a different thing when it, uh compared to a man. And yeah, I feel like there's a way that stuff in a sense is so murky when you reverse it, that it also shines like an interesting light on what happens with older men and younger women. And it's like a good place from which to sort of unpack some of the like that dynamic I was talking about, that we haven't like really let ourselves interrogate very much, because the focus has been more on women as victims of a system, but I think they are a part of the system. So anyway, and I guess in terms of like victims and resilience, and this character is very much pushing back against the idea of being a victim in any way, and wants to be resilient and wants to yeah, kind of maintain that sense of agency and free will, which
Mhm.
is sort of a big part of what she's struggling with, and ultimately, you know, that starts to unravel with the idea of free will itself. So, yeah, I think this character was a fun way to like explore some of that stuff without having to like write a Me Too novel.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's, a lot of people who talk about these themes usually are going to turn to someone like Camille Paglia
yeah.
to defend their arguments. And she surprisingly doesn't make an appearance in this book. Was that intentional or is that just by chance?
I mean, I never want to like overload the book with too many theorists
Mhm.
because I think then it just becomes very complicated. And I just really wanted to stick to Ayn. So there's like a little bit of Nietzsche in there, but he's more of a sort of, I think he's used a few times kind of in a joking way just to sort of like highlight Ayn's theories. But I didn't want to like it's like mixing metaphors when you're mixing too many theorists who people have all these associations with, it gets too complicated. And I think Camille is someone who like definitely complicates things. I mean,
Yes.
is a difficult person to kind of locate at all in terms of like not just I think is Camila they? I don't know anymore. But
It's
like literally in terms
no.
of their identity and
Yeah.
then their ideas and like their early thinking compared to their later or like current thinking and the YouTube videos that someone may have stumbled upon. It's just like it's too much
Yeah.
information. So I didn't really want to bring her in. I think Ayn is like I mean, Ayn's dead, so it also helps to kind of her identity and her legacy is pretty fixed. So that means you can like play with it and complicate it and make it as ambiguous and nuanced as you want without, yeah, just making people really confused.
Yeah, and as you were saying, the interesting thing about Ayn is that she's predominantly heterosexual woman.
Mm-hmm.
And that again, like that makes it interesting, especially considered the cultural narratives that you're challenging, because Camille, as someone who's definitely we can say is not straight, I think that's safe to
No.
say. Like it's her position in these discussions, it's different. It's different versus
Yeah.
Ayn as a straight woman. The only thing that I feel like Camille, the way she might shed light on this story is her, as much as she also borrows a lot from Nietzsche, she's also deeply Freudian. And I think when we look at the dynamic between the main character and these younger guys, like there's this maternal parental kind of thing happening that's unspoken, but
Mm-hmm.
she's picking up on it. And these young guys don't really realize that they're kind of looking for a mother figure, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that sheds light on again, like the commentary you're making on this larger bureaucratic system that wants to cancel anyone who has any problematic views. That like there's this kind of, as Camille would say, there's this like maternal kind of energy behind this type of bureaucratic structure that I don't know. I think you see at play again on the structural level, but also on the interpersonal level in the relationships.
Yeah, and it's funny hearing you say that. I was just thinking, I mean, are these boys looking for a mother or are they looking for a father? Because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like maybe big boys looking for a father and in a sense like a woman who is very Nietzschean or Rand like is almost like more of a paternal figure than a maternal figure. And you could say maybe a similar thing about the young boy in the second half of the book. So yes, I think that's like interesting to think about as well. Maybe I don't know. I haven't thought about it that much.
Yeah. So jumping to another point, I want to read an excerpt from halfway through the book. So there's this scene where the main character is having some issues in the bathroom. And I
Hmm.
get a little bit graphic just to warn people, but it's also pretty hilarious. So this is what the main character says. I grabbed the plunger and started stabbing at the hole as the sludge rose. No, I heard myself say. No, 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 I repeated. Fuck no. And then I was praying, please no. Praying to God, to dogs, to Ayn Rand. The sludge breached the toilet rim like a belly crawling black beast, sliming down the sides and onto the white tiling. The shit tide bled across the floor and around the bath mat and around toward the door. I could picture it seeping into the hallway carpet. It would keep going, out the front door and along the corridor, pooling over Big Boy's ceiling and cataracting down into his bedroom. I dropped to my knees and reached around the bowl for the toilet filter tap. Wrenching it down seemed to halt the flow. I breathed it in, and kneeling there, the truth came down, black and roaring, like the will of a building. It was all Ayn Rand's fault. So this scatological humor, we can call it, um, This is something I discussed with Jordan Castro when he came on the podcast, who was, also at the party you read there. Um, yeah, a lot of people. I personally find that kind of humor hilarious. I've always have, and I think
Mm.
you and Jordan are among the few people who can pull it off. But I'm wondering, why? Why is this keep coming up in the book? There's all these shit scenes. What is that about?
Um, I think it's about shame, uh, because I think there's a lot of maybe like body shame that is sort of underneath all the other kinds of shame that you might have, like around being someone who isn't satisfied. This character is not satisfied with where their career has gone, and they feel in some way like they are wrong or bad, or have like opinions that make them somehow not a good person. And there's just like all these ways in which they are sort of tortured by shame, the shame of like not being right, or there being like something kind of off about them. And I feel like in a sense there's like the crudest form of that, or like what's underneath it would be this like idea of someone, like knowing the worst, like the most embarrassing or kind of crudest thing about you, which would be your shit.
Yeah.
And or like shit is the metaphor, I guess, for other kinds of shit. And also this character literally painted the walls of their parents'
Yes.
bedroom with their own shit when they were a kid trying to get attention. So it's like, I guess, a way of using shame as a deflection, like it's like deflecting shame through comedy, through jokes, through
Mhm.
like painting the walls with shit, and then through these like jokes that are, whatever, shit stirring, or kind of in a way, yeah, like exposing of the worst parts of a person, or their most yeah, their worst ideas. And it's like, if you just put it out there in a way, you beat someone to the punch, and they can't kind of they can't hurt you more than you've hurt yourself in the act of like overexposure. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the idea.
I mean, it's interesting you're saying this shame, this self-exposure. Because when Jordan came on, I mentioned to him that there's actually a Jewish poop prayer that you say this prayer
Really?
after you poop, thanking God for
I
like your
didn't
body
know that.
functioning. But it's interesting because like first of all, this paragraph starts with the main character praying. They're not sure to God, is it to Ayn, to end
Yeah.
the clogged toilet, but you know, if you I don't know, like if you look at the biblical dimensions of this, like when you think of, I don't know, the beginning of the scriptures, like you have these people who are totally naked, and at first they're not ashamed because I don't know, like their transparency is not seen as something they're not vulnerable until after the fall, and then their nudity is something to be ashamed of because now they feel exposed, not in the sense of like, okay, now you can see my body, but like now I am vulnerable to being used, to being manipulated, to being led astray.
Mm,
So it's
mm,
interesting how like poop in a similar way could be
mm,
something you praise the creator for because it's, this is how a body functions naturally, the release of, excrement, but it could also be something that's shameful if you rub it on the walls, if it's just
mm.
overflowing out of the toilet. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, but that's, I mean, if this character wasn't such a secular Jew, maybe they would have known the prayer for the for shit.
Very few
It's
people get this.
I'd never heard of it. But yeah, I think yeah, I think it's something that like is not supposed to be seen. It's supposed to, we do so much to avoid, in a sense, uh ever having that exposed to anybody else.
Mhm.
Like we're particularly kind of uh sensitive to that in the West. I mean, even just, and maybe this is like a weird thing to say, but I was in Greece recently, and obviously spent some time there in the past, and I'm just always like amazed when, you know, you don't flush toilet paper there, you just put it in a little bin. And I just like find it incredible. Um, it almost feels like something that would like change, it must change your relationship to like
Yeah.
shit and other people's
Yeah.
shit, and to be just like constantly exposed to like other people's shit. Like the papers in the little toilet, every time you put your paper in there, you're seeing, and you just like become accustomed to it. And it's sort of like, you know, it becomes more normal. But I feel like, not that Greece is not the West, but I feel like other places where we have more robust sort of sewage systems or pipe systems, um, you know, we just like will do anything to not see that stuff or
Yeah.
have it like exposed in
Mm.
any way. And yeah, so I think, yeah, it's the ultimate kind of body shame. Um,
Yeah, because I mean, I have family in Greece, and I remember the
yeah,
first time we visited them. My side of the family, we have bowel issues. Full
right.
disclosure, and we were super embarrassed to use our family members' bathrooms. Like, they're gonna
Really?
smell, they're gonna judge us.
Yeah.
But to them, like, yes, this is what we do. We smell, and
Yeah.
we leave our toilet paper in the waste
Yeah.
bin. But I think you're right that it does reflect, like in the U.S. and maybe we could say other Anglo nations, like there is this
Yeah.
puritanical mentality that wants to hide things that are considered unseemly, whereas
Yeah.
I would say in the Mediterranean, it's different because it's not
Yeah.
a puritanical culture. It's not even Protestant,
No.
but
No. Exactly. But in Japan, I feel like with their, they have special, I feel like they are also more concerned with covering that stuff up, uh, with their toilets. No, I can't remember.
I would be
um,
curious to know more.
yes, I think it's worth writing a whole novel
Yeah,
on different cultures' relationship to shit. I mean, there's obviously going to be a lot of PhDs that have been written about this, but I think it's good. And yeah, I love that part of the novelist Jordan's book with the shit stuff. It was
yeah, because I
was
think for
very
him,
fun.
like it's the other side of the spectrum, like shit as this kind of sacred thing, whereas for you, you see
Mm,
like the shame side of it. But I think they go together,
yeah,
they complement each other in a way.
yeah. Well, I think I don't know if I'm just trying to remember like Philip Roth. How does he treat shit?
Mm.
Um, I feel like there's a little bit less. There's still shame, but there's not the same kind of shame maybe for men as women. You know, we all know that, yeah, women are sort of encouraged to hide that stuff more than men. And yeah, so I feel like it's probably a bit of a gendered thing
In a
as
way,
well.
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, my reading of that scene, in a way, I felt like so the fact that this like diarrhea overflowing, it's this I kind of saw it as like the excess of her obsession with Ayn's ideology and the fact that ultimately, at least the way she adheres to it, is in an ideological sense, to the point that it's
Mm,
detached from reality. Like you're trying to impose Ayn's ideas onto your life in a way that like
mm.
maybe they don't actually apply or don't really make sense. And I saw this to
Yeah.
become this seems to like be a theme that's weaved throughout the rest of the novel because you see several other ideologies pop up other than Ayn. So like, in the beginning you have like the victimhood, the social justice stuff, you have Ayn's self-reliance, the Nietzschean stuff. But then when she goes to Greece and goes to this, this commune, this retreat of sorts, you have this what I would call a kind of Gnostic spirituality, inspired loosely by Sufi ideas, kind of fringe Sufi ideas. That's all about ego death, self-abnegation.
Hmm.
And again, these seem to be like conflicting ideas, but at the end of the day, like what they all have in common is that they're ideologies that enable you to kind of justify your self-indulgent actions or your self-interested ideas. Like it's because they are detached from the real, and when that's why I'm saying, like, when I think of this
Mm.
diarrhea scene, it's like the excess of wanting to use ideology as an escape from the real overflows like diarrhea in a toilet. I don't know.
Mm.
But so that's why I want to ask you, just like, if you could talk a little bit more about like the kind of spirituality she finds at this place in Greece, and again, especially like the Sufi idea of the ego death, say a little more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I like your reading of obviously this idea of excess shit, or like as ideology itself, as the kind of like, yeah, the sort of purging of, like when you feel you have sort of been living according to, or just thinking according to a set of principles, and in a sense like damning everyone who doesn't think like you according to that ideology. And then the sort of realization of, in a sense, that like, not that it's all wrong, but that it's limited, and in a sense it's created ideas or reactions that are shit because they're
Yeah.
just like,
Mhm.
so yes, there is a sense of like, what have I done in that moment? And then I guess with spirituality, yeah, I think the ideas for me that were most interesting to explore, in this kind of like sort of hybrid, or like, yeah, sort of medley of different Eastern kind of philosophies that she encounters at this commune. I think the thing that like is most interesting to me about that stuff is there is a sense of um self-reliance that goes along with spiritual practice, where you're accepting things as they are, not trying to change things or people, and in a sense taking responsibility for your own happiness and your own um yeah, place in the world, and that idea of karma, and just how that stuff sort of maps onto a Randian philosophy of self sustainment, or what, her idea of like the self living for itself and not others. And then the idea of freedom that's kind of tied to that, um in a sense, that, yeah, that individual freedom is obviously a huge part of that kind of Eastern philosophy, and then obviously Randian philosophy, and then also, it is one huge part of liberal kind of ideology, although it gets all twisted in the
Yeah.
current iteration of, like how identity politics functions, and how it ends up sort of like suppress, or like, yeah, restricting how you can be as an individual in a kind of paradoxical sense. But yeah, and yeah, just that kind of radical idea of living for oneself and the freedom inherent in that. But then obviously on the other side, the sort of alienation or loneliness when you don't, yeah, when you're living for yourself and there's no communitarian kind of impulse.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say I mean, it was interesting because like 2 days after I went to your book launch, I went to an event at the Catholic Worker, the place that Dorothy Day founded, and there was a speaker talking about like Sufi spirituality, and she kept saying that this whole idea of the death of the ego, self-abnegation, is a huge part in most brands of Sufism. And one person said like, but isn't that dangerous? Like, doesn't that lead to like destruction of the self? Wouldn't that lead you to being destructive towards others? And this is something that comes up like towards the end of her stay, on the island in Greece, that she sees that this whole, again, this like ego death ideology becomes an excuse for people to do things that are very self-seeking and that don't really take into account the needs of others. So there's this cognitive dissonance there. And I don't know, like I couldn't help but think of Christopher Lasch when I was reading it, like the culture of narcissism,
Mm.
because Lash ultimately ends up arguing that narcissism is not born from too much self-love. It's born of a lack of self-love. It's born of a
Yeah.
lack of a genuine personality, true self-knowledge. And
Mm.
I don't know, like that's kind of what this character is seeing.
Yeah.
That the selfishness is born out of the lack of a true self.
Yeah, which, I mean, I read The Culture of Narcissism before I started writing this book, because, yes, it's very much about like uh, narcissism, and this idea of uh, what the ego is, and what a dysfunctional, well, I mean, his ego isn't dysfunctional,
Yeah.
but I guess I feel like the idea behind, ego death, I as a or I don't know if I agree that it's destructive to other people, because I guess, you know, and in terms of maybe the book, or even like any kind of behavior that would seem to be selfish, say in terms of like cheating on someone because you want to, and I and that's obviously like what happened to Ayn Rand, and how she sort of kind of fell apart at the end, where her lover was cheating on her and she kind of couldn't reconcile his selfishness, basically. But that's sort of different. That's selfishness. That's not selflessness. And I guess the ego death thing is sort of like, it works when nobody has an ego. That's, I think, that the distinction, and like the sort of complication. If you are acting sort of from a place of just I don't know, pure like just listening to your intuition or intentions, and sort of not worrying about other people's what other people might think. I think that can work in an environment where everyone is doing the same thing, like where everybody is sort of like pretty well, has killed their ego, or I mean, there's no such thing really unless you're like enlightened, but has a very sort of doesn't have a fragile ego, basically, so that none of these things can be taken personally, because that's really that's
Yeah.
what happens when someone gets hurt, is that they take an action that may not really have anything to do with them, and they take that someone else's action personally. And I guess I think I think, yes, in a spiritual community where everyone is sort of seeking to be free of ego, and like you even just look at like polyamorous sort of
Mhm.
communities, and there's kind of this agreed upon idea that like um that there's like enough love to go around, that like we don't have to be hurt, like you don't have to be hurt by someone else loving both you and another person. And and that's a real, there's like a lot of ego death in that idea, because so
Yeah.
much of the ego is tied to this need to be you know special and unique, and like the sort of the source of somebody's affection or adoration.
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess I think it works when there are people all pursuing the same thing, and then yeah, I don't know what happens
Um,
if
yeah,
they're
I
not.
mean, it raises the question if like there's a type of community that simultaneously teaches you to detach from your ego, but also fills you with a genuine sense of being valued. Like you're saying, like you're
Yeah,
pursuing some
yeah,
ideal, you're pursuing an ideal form of love that, again, it's like it's not an egotistical love, but it's one that they like truly respects and appreciates the value of the other person. Like that, it leads you to this kind of this middle point that could be a
yeah.
healthy alternative.
But I
uh,
guess, I mean, I think I don't know that you need to. I feel like there's like this kind of mania, especially in America, in the US, for sort of like filling the void with like affirmations and letting everyone know that they are good enough, and they are. And it's like, what if you didn't do that? What if you just let the void be there,
uh,
and
interesting.
like just like, could you survive the void? And I think everyone's terror of the void gets in the way of like actually experiencing it and surviving it. And I guess I've had these experiences in meditation where I'm not trying to fill that emptiness with um like someone else's love, even love for myself, God's love, whatever you want to, like, all of those things. It's just like, what is there? Like, what is in the emptiness? Is it like
Yeah.
this
uh,
cold metallic space of like nothingness, or is it like, in my experience, it is a positive, it is like a positive kind of space, or the quality of it is positive. It's like, it's not negative. It's full. It's not empty. Um, so so I think with Sufism, and I don't know that much about it, but I think there is more of a willingness to just embrace the emptiness, and obviously like trust that God is there in it, whatever you want to call God,
Yeah.
um, like existence, being, whatever. But you don't have to like inject it with this sort of like some affirmation about like, again, that's just about ego. If you're like, you are enough, you are loved. Um, so
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, at least just speaking from my own experience, like I agree, like I don't find it helpful if people try to presume to be able to fill this void that I
Mm,
have, because no person is going to completely fill that. I think like true community, true friendship can start when you say, hey, like I know I can't fill that void. Instead, I want to stay there with you. Like I want to seek whatever that answer is with you
yeah.
rather than attempting to fill it for you.
Yeah.
As you're saying, like when you seek a true goal like that, or a realistic goal like that, I think that can truly unify people. And again, going back to what you're saying about the Sufis, like there are many different brands of Sufism. You know, the one that she sees in the retreat is it's a very particular kind, but you know, I don't know. Like I know Sufis who live that like genuine sense of community that again
Mm.
can it's fulfilling precisely because you're not trying to fill the void.
Yeah. And it
Yeah,
also kind of it makes you, and I guess this ties to another part of the book, but it makes you like if you are not depending on other people to fill the void of your narcissistic void or whatever, then it makes you actually a much better person. You are not a better person in the sense that you are accepting of others, your expectations or your capacity for disappointment and rage are much smaller. You are merciful, like you are not um and in that sense, that's the part of like the sort of whole kind of altruistic or virtue signaling kind of leftist
right.
impulse that I find very suspicious is this. I don't believe that for a bunch of people who are so hypersensitive and fragile, like that there is a possibility for mercifulness, like for any true compassion, because that comes from a place of actually being okay with whatever is and letting people kind
Yeah,
of fuck up and fail. And obviously, not just saying, oh, well, you can do whatever you want, but like not being so hurt by someone else's actions that you can't kind of see the bigger picture or have compassion or like recover from it.
yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, so there's one other excerpt I want to read real quick before we close that I think ties in perfectly with this point you just made. So yeah, so the main character leaves this retreat. She's in Athens. She's looking at the Parthenon, and she says the Parthenon was netted in scaffolding, and on each step, people clustered out of breath, phones dutifully raised. I felt no awe or sense of mystery. I wasn't inspired to coo at the cradle of Western culture. I had never really believed in much of anything, except maybe books. Books which were not a boyfriend or a baby, not people at all. Books which could stomach paradox and knew that both things, good and bad, could be true. Baby was wrong about books. You didn't have to be enlightened to understand them. Great art was a gateway to the sublime. So this point about how books are able to capture paradox, you know, without, like you're saying, like without trying to fill the void, without trying to propose an ideological solution that's detached from reality. Because again, like if we look at the real, if we look at our lives, like where it's full of paradoxes, it's full of things that don't make sense. And I think, like, yeah, like the solution starts from accepting that reality rather than
Yeah.
flocking to some abstract utopian ideal, you know.
Yeah.
And as
Yeah.
you say, like it's in books that books give you space to delve into that paradox, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why I don't tweet or engage with anything on social media because I just think it's a terrible forum for like dealing with complex issues. It's, like that's where the long form essay or the book, novel, nonfiction, whatever, like that's thank God we have those things to like remind us that things are not as simple and like uh and to kind of remind us that this idea of good and evil is not helpful. Like
Yeah,
never helpful.
yeah.
Yeah.
So one more question, Lexi. Are you surprised by the feedback the book's been getting? Because it's getting covered in a lot of big places.
Yeah, I am. I guess my first experience, the experience of publishing my first book was so different. Uh I think I've put that down to a combination of like timing. I think people are quite sick of cancel culture at this point, so there's more openness to this kind of book and these ideas. But I don't know. And the Ayn Rand of it all is probably like, I think people do like to sort of talk about her, make fun of her, and but even just, re-engage with some of the ideas that are not terrible. And of course, everyone I think I've ever spoken to like confesses to having read her as a 15-year-old and like loving the books. And so like everyone has this kind of confusing relationship with her on the left. And so I think that's part of it. And otherwise, I don't really know. I guess, yeah, I think I hope it's also just that, people like sort of are like ready to laugh a little bit at like the sort of the cancel culture stuff and the way that we've all been kind of terrorized into silence over the last few years. I think maybe people are just tired of that, and this book offers a little bit of respite or something.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think that's the solution to most things is to learn how to laugh. And I think
Yeah,
a good way to start is pick up this book. I mean, you'll be laughing left and right. So Lexi, thank you for writing it first of all, but thank you also for coming on to talk about it.
my pleasure. This has been a really, really good conversation. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.